I had always heard about the dangers of driving at night. The stories my grandmother used to tell me about spirits wandering the dark roads of our village haunted me as a child. But as I grew older, I dismissed them as mere folklore. That night, however, I wished I had heeded her warning. It was a chilly autumn evening, and I was returning home from a friend's house in a neighboring town. The clock on my dashboard blinked 11:47 p.m. as I cruised along the empty road. The route I chose was the shortest, but also the most desolate. The road was flanked by dense woods on either side, and the moonlight barely pierced through the thick canopy above. The hum of my car engine was the only sound that accompanied me. I turned up the radio to break the silence, but the static only heightened the eeriness of the night. After a few minutes of trying to find a clear station, I gave up and switched it off. The silence returned, more oppressive than before. As I drove, my thoughts began to wander. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a shadowy figure seated in the back seat. There was nothing, just the empty darkness of my car. The road ahead twisted and turned, with each bend plunging me deeper into the forest. My headlights illuminated the narrow path, casting long, eerie shadows that danced on the road. Every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of movement in the trees, but it was too fleeting to discern what it was. I told myself it was just the wind playing tricks on me. Then I saw it, a figure standing by the side of the road, just ahead in the distance. At first I thought it was a hitchhiker, but as I got closer, I realized something was off. The figure was tall and gaunt, draped in tattered clothing that bluttered in the breeze. Its face was hidden under a hood, and it stood unnaturally still, as if waiting for something, or someone. Chill ran down my spine, and I instinctively pressed down on the accelerator, wanting to get past it as quickly as possible. As I sped by, I couldn't help but glance out of the window. The figure turned its head slowly to follow my car, and for a split second, I caught a glimpse of its face. Pale, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I felt a jolt of terror, my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to rationalize what I had seen. It was just some drifter, I told myself, someone playing a prank to scare late-night travelers. But deep down, I knew there was something more to it. The figure's gaze lingered in my mind, unsettling and unshakable. As I continued down the road, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick, with an unnatural stillness. I kept my eyes fixed on the road, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread that gnawed at me. The further I drove, the more the darkness seemed to close in around me, as if the forest itself was alive, breathing and watching. And then, without warning, my car began to sputter. The engine coughed and wheezed before dying completely, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere. I tried turning the key, but the engine wouldn't start. The headlights flickered and went out, plunging me into complete darkness. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for my phone, but there was no signal. I was alone, isolated in the pitch-black night. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own rapid breathing. I couldn't stay in the car. The thought of being trapped in that confined space, with whatever was out there lurking in the shadows, was too much to bear. I grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out, the cold night air biting at my skin. The road stretched out into the darkness, endless and unwelcoming. I knew I had to find help, but the nearest town was miles away. My only option was to walk, hoping to come across a house or a passing car. I started down the road, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Every step I took felt like an eternity, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The trees loomed over me, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands, and then I heard it, a soft rustling behind me. I froze, my heart racing. I turned slowly, shining the flashlight back down the road. At first I saw nothing, just the empty stretch of asphalt. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. Figure was back, standing in the middle of the road, not far from where my car had broken down. It was the same one I had seen earlier, its hollow eyes staring directly at me. It was closer now, close enough for me to see the pale, almost translucent skin stretched tightly over its bones. I stumbled back, the flashlight shaking in my trembling hand. Figure took a step forward, and then another. its movements slow and deliberate. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. It turned and ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The road seemed to stretch on forever, an endless nightmare with no escape. I could hear the sound of footsteps behind me, growing louder, faster. It was chasing me. I didn't dare look back. I pushed myself to run faster, my legs burning with the effort. But no matter how fast I ran, the footsteps were always there, right behind me, closing in. And then, just as I thought I couldn't run any further, I saw it. Faint light in the distance. A house. Relief flooded through me, giving me the strength to keep going. I reached the house, an old, weathered building that looked like it had seen better days. I pounded on the door, my voice hoarse as I shouted for help. The door creaked open, and an elderly woman peered out, her eyes wide with concern. I stumbled inside, gasping out an explanation of what had happened. She listened quietly, her face growing pale as I described the figure. "You saw it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The Watcher." I frowned, confused. "The what?" "The Watcher of the Woods," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's an old legend around here. They say it appears to those who wander the roads at night, and once it marks you, it never lets go." I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. What does it want?" She shook her head, her eyes filled with a sorrowful fear. "No one knows, but those who see it, they never escape." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the lights flickered. The woman looked around, her fear palpable. "You brought it here," she said, her voice shaking. Before I could respond, the door burst open with a force that sent it crashing against the wall. The figure stood in the doorway, its hollow eyes fixed on me. I backed away, terror gripping me. The woman screamed, but the sound was cut short as the figure raised a bony hand and the room plunged into darkness. The last thing I saw was those hollow eyes, staring into mine, as everything faded to black. When I woke up, I was back on the road, my car idling quietly beside me. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft light over the forest. There was no sign of the house, or the woman, or the figure. It was as if it had all been a dream. But as I got into my car and drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me, lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And deep down, I knew that no matter how far I drove, no matter how fast I went, I would never escape the Watcher of the Woods.